Howdy.
Howdy.
Justin is a small business owner who owns a few thousand head of cattle on his small ranch. The cattle actually produce a lot of methane and, unfortunately, don't have a lot of live weight when it comes to other methods other than antibiotics. Unfortunately, Justin has to spend approximately $30 to $50 every single year per head of cattle just in antibiotics alone for growth enhancers. What if I told you that there was a much better solution that was cost effective, that did not need antibiotics, that actually increased feed efficiency, and reduced global warming significantly? My name is Grace Ty, and this is Ryan Springer, and today we are representing Bezoar Laboratories, a social enterprise. Our solution for Justin is something called Penicillus 79-R4. This is a probiotic that was developed and patented here at Texas A&M by our lead researcher, Dr. Elizabeth Latham. We don't have time to go into the chemistry behind how this works. However, we want to touch on a few key points. First off, this probiotic is amazing because it actually does increase feed efficiency quite a bit. So Justin has a big problem. He wants his cattle to produce a lot more beef. When we're looking at feed efficiency, this actually increases the beef from the cattle by approximately 3.4 grams per day when they're taking this probiotic, which is very significant economically when we're looking at weight gain and the economics of cattle. Secondly, it does decrease pathogens. Anyone in this room who knows someone who has experienced food poisoning or experienced themselves know that that's pretty significant and a pretty important problem to tackle. Thirdly, this probiotic actually reduces methane production. Methane production is one of the most powerful greenhouse gases out there, and actually our probiotic reduces methane by approximately 50% in cattle production. To put this into perspective, if just 1% of US producers implemented this probiotic into their feed, it would be the equivalent of removing 1 million cars off of the road. That's very, very significant. So while we really like our features in our probiotic, we're really curious to see if this would actually translate into a viable business plan. In order to do that, we were able to do 245 face-to-face interviews through the NSF I-Core program. And we talked to everybody within the supply chain, from feedlot manufacturers to, of course, the dairy farmers and ranchers themselves, to probiotic companies. What we found out is that actually the timing for us is perfect right now. Just within the past decade, antibiotic resistance and also global warming has really come to the forefront. Just in 2017, the Veterinary Feed Directive was implemented, which actually dictates how producers can actually put antibiotics in production animals. So essentially what I'm saying is that this really does hit a pain point for these people. For them, when we talk to them, they're really concerned about these issues, but they're just like, well, we still use antibiotics because we just don't have any other solution out there right now that will help us still with feed efficiency. When we're looking at competition, of course, I already touched on antibiotics, but I also want to mention very briefly red seaweed and 3-NOPA chemical. Unfortunately, these have not been made into viable business plans, and the reason for that is because they're not cost efficient, which is also the reason why the main competitor that we're looking at right now is just antibiotics.
So speaking of cost effectiveness, as you can see here from our financial projections, the increased revenue due to additional meat from the increased feed efficiency is approximately $4 greater than the cost of our probiotic formulation. And now, $4 might not sound like a whole lot, but when you keep in mind that that's just for one animal, the total addressable market in the United States is approximately 74 million head of cattle, and we're planning on eventually expanding into the international market, which includes over 1.4 billion and counting. We have an amazing team here. Elizabeth received her PhD from Texas A&M last year, and she holds a patent to our technology. Grace is she is a PhD candidate and has a graduate certificate in entrepreneurship from Mays Business School. I'm Ryan, and I graduate next month, May, with a degree in manufacturing and mechanical engineering technology. So where does that bring us? We want to be an industry standard, but for the next 5 years, we're shooting for 20% of the addressable market in the US. We plan on doing that by becoming an ingredient in existing feed supplements rather than a standalone product. So we're working on troubleshooting FDA regulations, and we have hired a consultant to help us with that. We already have 2 partners, DSM and Unilever, who are co-funding a pilot study that we designed, and we are also pursuing an SBIR and are partnered with the USDA through a cooperative research and development agreement through which we have exclusive rights to the license for our patent. So how do we get to this ambitious but necessary goal? We are looking for a small 6-figure investment in order to fund a production study. We're also seeking key contacts in the industry who can help us get this product in the hands of ranchers across the country. Thank you sincerely for your time, and we look forward to answering your questions. And next time we'd also like Elizabeth to come up because she's going to help us with the Q&A.
So do you already have an exclusive license negotiated with the OTC?
Yes, we do. That actually was just passed a few weeks ago when we started. We actually just got the CRADA from the USDA that was co-developed.
And what is your royalty rate?
We're still negotiating that right now. So far, we've just gotten verbal confirmation, but we're waiting to get the paperwork.
And you're doing this as a for-benefit corporation? I don't think I heard you say that when you started. You're not looking at making it for-profit, or did I misunderstand that?
So we're a social enterprise, so we are for-profit, but basically, mathematically, we've calculated that about 15% of our profits we can subsidize for small farms and also developing nations. Because we really feel this is something that needs to get into the hooves and the hands of every single person because of the climate change impact. So we basically, because we know for some people it is going to be cost prohibitive, we want to have that social enterprise aspect.
And there's some pretty big probiotics in the equine area already, correct?
That's absolutely correct.
And tell me about that market and how that parallels to this in terms of how you roll it out.
So methane isn't a big concern in the equine market. That is something that we're interested in pursuing long term. We are looking right now into porcine pigs and then also chickens, especially for the natural antimicrobial that this probiotic makes, because that is a bigger issue for them. In terms of the equine market, I would be really interested in talking to some experts in that field to see ways that we could help them.
I can introduce you to the guy that controls that business.
Awesome.
Elizabeth, how did you meet these two? What struck you about them?
That's a really great question. About 2 years ago, Grace and I were eating chicken and waffles, and we both had an insurance We both.
We all both from California.
I had the patent, and I wasn't getting anywhere, and Grace had an interest in entrepreneurship, and it was just an obvious match. And then, funny enough, we met.
Yeah. Sorry. Do you want me to? Okay. So this is really funny because through Blackstone Launchpad, Brian actually found our video that we had done previously. He contacted us, and so I'm in the humanities, Elizabeth is in biology, life sciences, and Ryan's an engineer, and we were like, we need diversity on our team because we eventually want to manufacture our own probiotics.
Yeah.
So we're like, yes.
Yeah. So thank you for those tools for the entrepreneurship here at Texas A&M. We're again an example of that, but it was an insane coincidence. So it was a week later he contacted us and whoa.
Sorry, real quick, the patent covers what exactly?
It's basically the probiotic itself, usage for it, and then the methane reduction prowess of this
the
taxa.
formulation for the probiotic, actually, it's a formulation.
Everything. It's crazy, we have 60 claims on this patent.
How many independent claims?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So with patents, there's independent claims and dependent claims. Your
Okay.
total claim set is going to be a mixture of independent and dependent. A lot of those dependents are going to get struck when you go to the actual.
Yeah, they've already gotten back to us and they want us to eventually break it into 3 separate patents.
Okay.
And that's another financial limitation that we're running into because each of those are going to cost at least $20,000. So that's something we do need help funding wise.
And where's your company based out of?
Right here
College Station.
for now. Yeah.
Yeah. Brian, technically.
Great.
How can you prove that it works?
So we've done research on using the Texas A&M research herd and then also the USDA research herd. And what we see in there with the probiotic formulation is basically all the amazing value proposition and claims